Hey everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live Creative Challenge. Joined by Liv King again. Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, still good?
Things have changed a lot in the last few minutes.
I know, for those watching live, we were here like 5 minutes ago, but you might be watching the recording.
True,
and so I still want to make sure that you are well.
I'm well.
And welcome you back. And so, I'm Flynn, and in the next sort of 30 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to kick off our third ever Creative Challenge. And so the idea of the Creative Challenge is we will create something in about 30 minutes with the idea that you could also do the same thing at home in about 30 minutes, learn something new, and you can sort of share your progress with us over the next couple of weeks, and we can see, what you're able to create during that time, and hopefully we all learn a little bit together. So if this is your first time to Adobe Live, you can log in and ask questions as we go through this. So you can log in using your Adobe ID in the top right-hand corner and ask us questions as we go. But Liv, part one of your creative challenge, what are we going to do?
All right. So maybe it's good to start with, I guess, what we're looking to do over the whole of these next 4 weeks. So we're really kind of focusing in on digital product design, and we're going to be using XD primarily, although in this episode there's going to be a lot of more hands-on work. And the reason that is because what I wanted to do was kind of introduce you guys to what's more of a typical kind of workflow within, say, like a product team or when you're working on an app. Generally speaking, I think I find like a lot of tutorials, you can come across them out there and they're always like, here's how you start an app from scratch. And it's not quite the reality out there. It's often like you actually start in an existing app. And so it's all about, these 4 weeks are all about essentially how do we sketch, how do we test, and how do we design a new feature that's coming into an existing app.
Very cool.
I've broken that down in little bits that hopefully you guys can follow along. I think they're pretty good, but just want to, again, sort of replicate what's more of a reality out there for this sort of work.
Perfect. Very cool. And so, if you haven't used Adobe XD before, it's actually free. So if you have an Adobe account, like Creative Cloud account, like many of us do, obviously you can just download it with the applet, but you can also sign up and use Adobe XD for free. So this is a great opportunity and time to do that.
Yeah.
So why don't we get started?
All right, let's get into it. All right, so what I've got here in XD is actually just more kind of like slides and overview of what we're going to do. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of what today's going to be about, and also a little recap on what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to get stuck into a couple of little exercises.
Cool.
All right, so as I said, we're sketching and we are testing and designing a new feature in an existing app. So you probably saw on the site, we've got this little diagram to kind of explain what we'll be looking at each week. Just zoom in a little bit on that. So week 1 is looking at ideation and sketches. And this is like a super crucial part of product design, or I find. And I felt like it wouldn't be like accurate to the process if we didn't cover something like this. And it's not typically like within something you would do within XD, but it's also something in the same way that I wouldn't jump into Illustrator or Photoshop without sketching out something first necessarily. If I was illustrating something, this is very similar. Like I wouldn't jump into XD and just create something. Usually I would do a wireframe, I do sketches, I do ideas first. So this is what this is about for this week. Next week we're going to look at wireframes and prototypes in XD. Then week 3 we're going to look at sort of, I guess, when you're putting something into production and you're like polishing things up, ready to get integrated back into the app as it is. And then week 4 we're going to just wrap up and kind of discuss things and go through your submissions as well.
Perfect.
All right, so to set the scene, now what we're going to look at, as I said, is a new feature within an existing app. So the question is, what is that existing app? The app that we're going to be looking at for the next 4 weeks is actually an existing app. It's called Wildcard. It's kind of like a banking app, but a lot simpler, and it's designed for people who sort of want to track their spending and keep things quite kind of lean and make sure they're focusing on what they can and can't spend, sort of stuff. And it's got a card so you can kind of spend things as you go, but essentially very similar to the banking apps that you would use wherever you are. So if you want to use one of those apps, that's fine, because what we're going to be looking at is a feature around bill splitting. And bill splitting, I think, is pretty universal. Everyone goes to cafes. They have housemates they might like split a bill with. So it's pretty universal. So it doesn't really matter what app you're using, but I've been working with Wildcard for a little bit, the last, I don't know, couple of months. So they've been kind enough to say that I can use their app and we'll have the assets ready for, especially for next week when we start to prototype and we can start to use some of the things that they've got in there.
Cool.
So, like I said, it's just pretty simple. The way it's broken down as an app is you've got your home screen here. You've got kind of money in the spending account. That money actually drips into your account, so it kind of like ticks up, but essentially it's kind of giving you a bit of a steady stream of money as opposed to being like, here's all your money at once. So lets you kind of spend a bit more consistently. You've got a profile. This is my cat or my kitten, who's my profile at the moment. I've got this much in my main account. I've got other accounts. I've got a spending account, which is this one, and I've also got this locked account, and money also streams into that one. So
it's like a forced savings system.
Kind of, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got my transactions account here, which is my list of transactions, which is pretty straightforward. And then I've got this little transfer kind of half modal there, which is meant to be a very quick, easy way to transfer between friends and people on the app already. So that's the kind of context. So feel free to use this as your basis. Otherwise, feel free to also use your existing banking apps if you want to use that too.
So people at home could just maybe take a couple of screenshots of whatever app they want to.
Yeah, you could just look at that and say, like, how would my bank do bill splitting, for example?
Right.
I'm just using this one because it's kind of a bit new, a bit different, and it's kind of a bit fun. And I have the files, so it's fun to play with something that's a bit more. I think we were talking a bit about this as well, as like I find banking apps at the moment, like I don't really have one that I love because they're all quite old school and, you know, they're bogged down by like, here's like a new mortgage you can get or here's a new credit card you get. Whereas like this app actually is really focused on just a really simple kind of day-to-day use of a card on spending and stuff like that. So keeping things easy. So what are we going to look at today specifically now that we've got a bit of a context? So what we want to do, like I said, is we're looking at a new feature. And in order to start the process of looking at how that new feature gets introduced, we're going to start with sketching and we're going to start with a few things. And then what I want to cover is a couple of different things. One is framing the question with a framing the problem with a how might we question. We're going to look at ideation using a tool called Crazy Eights, which some of you might be familiar with. If you're not, that's totally fine. I have my guinea pig Flynn here to help with this. And then we're going to just finish this up with concept cards. Now, all of these are kind of gearing towards creating stuff that's testable. And I think this is actually like a really crucial part of this creative challenge. And something that I want to really encourage you guys to do is to come away each week with something that you can put in front of someone else and ask them what they think about it. Right. Because there's nothing worse than designing, particularly in product design, designing something that is in isolation, that you haven't tested, that you don't, you're just basing everything on your own assumptions when you could walk out the door and ask someone and they might be like, yeah, but I don't split bills or I don't do this sort of thing. And you just don't want to get too ahead of yourself and design on your own. So a lot of it's to do with that. So keep that in mind, that what we want to do is to really test at all times. So the first step of this whole kind of section today is around like framing the problem. And what I've got here is a how might we statement. How might we's, I actually can't quite remember who started the how might we's. I want to say it was like Google maybe. But
I think there's quite a few people that I think it's a bit like design thinking. There's a couple of people like, well, we actually did that in the 80s.
It's a common little framework that comes up in a lot of different design processes. And what it's really doing is just framing what you have as a problem. Like, that maybe you've kind of come into this at this point and said, we've got data, we've got information that's telling us that our users really want to split bills. But you're actually just framing it up as a problem to solve, which is really nice. And something that I really love within the how might we statement is the word we. And I find that really important because it's not about designing on your own. It's about how do we solve this as a team. And that's not just how do we as the designers solve this as a team. It's how do we, the developers, the product manager, like everyone in that team look at this problem from all different angles and try and solve it. So for that reason, I would encourage you to try and do some of this like fun ideation stuff on your own if you can. Oh, sorry, not on your own. Definitely not on your own.
With some buddies.
With some buddies, with some friends, people you're studying with, people who around you. Like, don't do it on your own.
And you don't have to be a designer to do this either.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You absolutely don't need any experience for this sort of stuff, which is like what a lot of this co-design stuff is all. It's why it's so good.
Yeah.
Because that idea that you're the designer and you're the boss of everything, it just doesn't really exist anymore, in my opinion and in my experience. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, get some buddies together.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to getting manual. We are going to look at sketching and doing Crazy Eights. So Crazy Eights are a tool that I think Google started using a lot, and again, who knows where it came from, but I use a lot. And it's called Crazy Eights because we have, as you can see, 8 squares on a simple piece of paper. So what I've done is I've just folded that into 8. And they're basically ways that we can really rapidly iterate and create ideas. And they're meant to be crazy. So don't worry if they don't have to be super, like, you don't have to nail it the first go, basically. Like, I think the point here is to force your brain to start to think really outside the box. The way we do that is we put a time limit on these. So I'm going to set a timer.
Am I doing this too?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Flynn is going to help and do this, and we're going to share back. Now, I'm going to talk through mine as I go. Flynn's going to do his just on his own, and we are going to share back at the end of this. And the point is we're going to share back and talk a little bit more about what we decided. And what we came up with, and then we're going to think, all right, which ones do we like the most and how do we kind of take them into the next round? All right, so I've got my timer set for 40 seconds.
Ooh, that's fast.
Yeah, it's going to go really fast. I'm going to talk out loud, as I said. Flynn's going to do his, and I'm only going to do 4 for now, just because we were a bit short on time. But we'll go, you would do 8 of these, 40 seconds each. And you would also then probably do another round after that because a lot of this is about iterating and refining. But yeah, all right. So let's see how this goes.
So what are we actually doing? What are we solving here?
That's a great question.
Right.
If we go back to our how might we statement, we're saying how might we allow users to easily split a bill with friends.
Okay. So we're thinking about adding that functionality to
an existing app. Yep.
To the existing
So it's good to have in your mind, like, how do people currently pay for things? What are some behaviours people have when they're splitting bills? What's sort of around them in their worlds? And also, how do they kind of currently use this app that we're kind of working with? Which is why it might be helpful to use your own banking app just to simplify things, or one that you're just making up. So splitting bills, that's what we're focusing on.
Got it.
All good. All right, I'm going to set the first timer.
Prepare to be whelmed.
Just whelmed, only in Europe.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I'm going to set the timer and we're going to get started.
Okay.
All right, so as I said, I'm going to talk out loud. So I kind of like just to number mine and name it. The first thing I'm thinking of here is, like, it'd be really cool if when you get when you spend something, you get a little notification and you make your transaction. So you're at the cafe, you've paid for everyone, and you get a notification that says, all right, you've just paid for this, do you want to split it? And then you get, on the notification, you press split, and then it takes you to a screen and you can kind of split that much, and you can choose your friends there and you can sort of say split. And that's the first one done.
Uh-oh.
So next one, I'm just going to name this one notification. Next one, I think often when you go out, you know how you have friends who are like, I'm only going to have the salad, and you're like, but I want to split everything. So what if we had sort of like this nice little camera feature where I've got, let's see, I take a photo of my bill. I'm going to put a little flash on there. And then it comes up in the app with all those kind of in a line itemized. And then I put a little like plus button and I can add someone to that. And then each person is kind of added to that item and I can say split. That's done. All right. I'm thinking maybe what would be fun and crazy is this idea of like a debt collector bot. Because you know how you have friends who just never remember to pay you? So you can kind of have this like bot that pops up and it's a bit sassy and it kind of says, hey, you owe this person money. And you're like, oh, sorry, I forgot about that. And they're like, pay up. And so you can kind of pay within this bot and click on that kind of thing. So I'm just going to name that one. All right, next one, last one. What am I going to do with this one? So I think like these are a bit crazy. Maybe on this, I'm just going to say in my like transactions list, maybe the simplest way to do this is to actually just tap on a button, or maybe actually, you know, when you can do a quick action and you can sort of slide across. I'm going to have a quick action on this transaction. Quick action. And I can very quickly slide this across and kind of, I guess, do a quick action, and then it'll take me to a second screen. Yeah. All right. So that was the super quick version. Actually, it's not super quick. It's exactly what you would do in real life.
It felt quick.
And the kind of fun, the thing about this as well, I want to get across, this is exactly the level to which you should do it. Like, even less so, like draw stick figures or whatever. You do not have to be an artist at all to do this. It's really just to get your idea across and out there.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. What do you, maybe actually would be, everyone knows what I did. What did you do, Flynn? You want to share with everyone?
Oh wow. Should we put it over there?
Yeah, let's put it over here and you can kind of talk
everyone
it
at
through.
home can look at this. I mean, this is going straight on the fridge.
Yeah.
That's how good this
Frame
is.
it.
So here, you know, I really took the idea of doing having bad ideas and getting them out to heart. So the first one was SMS. So I thought that, well, maybe if people don't have the same app, maybe we could generate something within the app that sends your friend an SMS, and then that would be a way to get in new users into the app as well, which could have a link to pay or something like that, or a link to download the app. The other one was like more of an airdrop. That's not very well fleshed out, to be honest. That's the top left. Yep. Then the little bump one. Do you remember an app ages ago?
I remember that. Yeah,
you used to be able to bump, and I think the idea was, oh, cool. Why don't we bump and then we can share information?
Yep.
I think that technology still exists, but
Surely.
no app has really that I use.
That's a market we need to get into.
So the idea would be that maybe you could both have the app, and then you could just kind of bump to pay each other. So maybe you could have like a top up kind of level within the app, and then you could share. And then the other one was like, well, maybe there's a tap into social media where you could take a photo of the bill, but then you could tag people for what they had. So if someone had, you know, the $300 bottle of red wine and you're not drinking, then, you know, that maybe they could get tagged.
There's
and it's
evidence.
like, yeah, and there's a little bit of a social pressure to pay for your bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Nice.
There we go.
Cool. So we've got these two ones here, which is really awesome. What we would normally do here, like I said, is kind of maybe go to another round and do crazy fours. So that's really about, you would divide it into 4 and then you would go to refine. And what's my favorite bit about this next step is about stealing ideas. So no idea is yours at this point. You're really about trying to find what the best idea is. So I kind of really like this social element to the tagging. It kind of fits well with this splitting bill one that I had here. So maybe I'll kind of steal a bit of that to work with this into my next iteration. And then at the end of that, after you've done all 4, you'd sort of do a little bit of a vote and just figure out, like, especially when you've got a lot of people doing something like this, you might just dot vote and say, all right, I really like this one and that one. And that's really good and useful to kind of then know, all right, we've eliminated all the kind of ones that are fun but don't maybe quite make sense. Like you had one around pigeons before, like,
Right.
which I like the idea of, but maybe not so feasible for testing.
Yeah.
Unless you had spare carrier pigeons.
That's true.
But essentially we would take that round to the next round. Yeah, so that's ideation basically. That's Crazy Eights.
Crazy Eights, which is cool.
As you can see, it's pretty easy. Find it easy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always good for designers to have a time period, like a box to play in.
Yes.
I always say. So it's always great to know what your budget is, what your time is, and what you're actually doing. And then I think you can do anything.
Yeah.
Not well, as you could see from the examples that I provided, but at least, hey, we got it done.
Yeah. That's the main thing.
Got it done on deadline.
Yeah, and that, I think often Crazy Eights is referred to as rapid ideation because it's really about like getting as many out as possible. And usually you don't have a lot of time to think about this stuff. I think often the teams I've worked in where we're trying to incorporate a new feature is in a 2-week turnaround. And, you know, you have to have ideas, you have something to test in the first week, because really you want to get people in to test and you want to talk to them. And then by the second week, you're kind of already way ahead and things get in the way. So you're trying to like actually move really, really fast. And this is a super good exercise to do that. And yeah,
I love
it's really good. So the next part of this is card sorting on concept cards, which is this kind of last one here. So this does also involve a bit of sketching. I have prepared some prior because I was just trying to be organised and I wasn't sure how much time we would have, and we are running out of time. But what this is about, as it says there, turning ideas into something testable. So, you know, these crazy eights that we've got, like, we can't really put them in front of people. They're good for us when we're talking through them, but we can't get sort of that unbiased kind of feedback from people and get them really contemplating whether they would use that sort of stuff. So we want to make concept cards. Now, that's not particularly hard. They're actually really simple. I think there's a little asset in the comments that have been shared, which is or will be, and this is kind of something I put together for you guys. So the first one is like a little crazy 8 sheet, which is actually just a template if you want to use that, which is super handy. It says 40 seconds under there just to remind you to stick to the 40 seconds. Oh, if you go to Crazy 4s, you do 80 seconds per one. You can Google that. There's some rules. But the other thing in here is I've got these concept cards. They're kind of on the side, which you can kind of print off and then sketch on. But essentially what I've got here is, as I said, my pre-prepared ones. Now, as you can see, they are not exceptionally pretty as designs. In fact, they are like quite a bit awful because I did them late last night. But the point is actually you don't need them to be any difficult, anything particularly magical or amazing. Like this one, if I put that in front of someone, which is it's the itemized bill one, I think, you know, people can get across what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to ask there. So what you would do here is you would take your best and your favorite ideas from the Crazy Eights. You would make up some concept cards, and rather than label them or anything like that, you would put these in front of people and say, okay, there's a couple of things I would ask some people, and I would just ask someone to sit down with me for like a coffee or like a beer and, you know, make it pretty informal, but say, all right, firstly, have a look at all the cards in front of you. We're looking at, in fact, I probably wouldn't even tell them what we're looking at to start with. Just say, we're testing a new feature. Could you have a look at the cards and tell me what you think is happening here? Now, pretty quickly, they're going to look at split across all of this, and they'll probably get to the fact that it's about bill splitting. But what's really interesting is often finding what people immediately think straight up, and they may think that it's something completely different. And sometimes that's really cool because then you're like, I didn't even think about that. Like I didn't even know that I didn't even think ahead to that they would be thinking it would be this thing. So
it's amazing what you take for granted and then other people sort of say, oh, okay. Oh no, I completely thought this was something else. And you test it with a bunch of people and they also think the same thing. You're like, oh wow, I really need to
I've been in my bubble. I need to think about this a bit differently. Yep, absolutely. So that's where I would start. I'd say, okay, what do you think it is? Then I would ask them to think about which ones they kind of think they would like to use or what they prefer, and I might get them to sort of just like rank them and say like, all right, in what order do you think these would go in from your like most preferred to your least preferred? And then I would single in on kind of focus in on that first one and say like, why do you prefer that one? Like why do you like it? What? And really dig into it, because I think at that point you're starting to access things like, well, you know, their behaviors, and they might say, well, I like this because, you know, I often forget to ask people to you know, send me money. And if it comes up as a notification, I can do it right then and there, and it's a good reminder. And then you might go down to here at the end and you're like, why is this your least preferred? And they might say, well, whenever I'm at cafes, the lighting's really low, so I actually don't think I'd be able to take a photo, and I'm always self-conscious of that. So I don't think I like to do that sort of stuff.
What if I forget to take a photo or lose a receipt?
Or I didn't get the receipt. Like I always say no to receipts. So, you know, that's really interesting behavior to learn about people as you go. So that's where you'd sort of start to capture those notes, and then you'd say, okay, this is working because of these reasons. This is working because of that. And then you want to, I guess, start to refine that again. And that's where we kind of then start to look into what we'll be covering in week 2, which is around sort of wireframing and prototyping, because once you've got a better and clearer idea of like what really works, you can start to invest your time into some of those more kind of technical things. Like what's really good about this is you're not investing too much time because these are really lo-fi. You're actually just trying to get to the answer as quick as possible. And then you can kind of start to put more time and energy in wireframing and developing a bit of a prototype, and then finally actually making that prototype really nice. But you're not getting way ahead of yourself when you realize you've spent like, you know, let's say 8 of your 10 days designing something pixel perfect to find that people don't want to use it.
Yeah.
So that's why I really advocate using this sort of technique and these sorts of sketching early on to get started, because I find it's a lot less pressure as well without starting on a blank page on a screen. You're just used to kind of getting things sketched out and making it loose. So yeah, so that's kind of it. And then I guess, yeah, to recap what we've looked at, as I said, is we've got our how might we statement. So we've started by sort of framing up what we want to do with a problem, so framing it with a question. So we've said how might we, got it here, how might we allow users to easily split bills with friends? With a how might we statement, I'd probably just say as well, like you don't want to be too vague on that one. You want to have a few little things in there that are a bit more specific. So you don't want to go too broad, but you don't want to go too detailed. But this is probably a good kind of level where, you know, I've said split bills with friends. So I know friends are kind of involved. I know that we need to make it easy. So those are sort of some things to make me think a little bit more like laterally about all the different angles that you could approach this problem with. So yeah, so we've looked at a how might we statement. We've looked at our Crazy 8 session, which is really cool. I think definitely try that. You can try that on everything. Like I use it on other things that are not product related. It's really good just to put a little time pressure on you to get it out, and also to get other people to help you. And then lastly, our concept cards. So basically turning what we had in our Crazy 8s into something we can go out and test with. And like I said, I've got those little assets for you to print off here. So I've already got some concept cards, sort of templates there that you can just fill in. And same with that Crazy 8s one, which you should be able to just, I guess, export and print off. So yeah, that is our creative challenge.
Fantastic. So
week 1.
Those thanks so much, Liv. Those assets, like if you're watching the live now, so you guys in the chat, it's just up the top. It says download template here. If you're watching on YouTube, so if you're watching the video afterwards, it's down the bottom in the comments. And if you do each step, as we go through, we'll set it up in a way that you can actually share what you're producing as we go, which we'd love to see.
Yeah, I think with this actually, what I would love is like, don't test my ideas, test your own ideas. Go out, like have a little session, think about all the different, that was like one version of what would be many, many ideas that you could come up with. And so go out and test yours, and then let us know next week in the comments, like what did you find? What did people say? Like, did you find that this was really good? And that can help us kind of I guess, start to refine what we're designing over the next 3 weeks collaboratively as well. Yeah.
So we hope to see you here next Wednesday. We'll be back with part 2. And thank you so much, Liv.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Cheers. See you guys.
Thank you.